thank you for your time. And now I know I want to actually pass the speaking point to an individual who has been truly, truly integral in making this happen today for our Blaze Ahead event. I know that what we're doing today is something that she's truly passionate about and has a background in. So I'm thankful that she's been so hands-on and putting this together. All right, introducing Mrs. Naila Bader, who will be the moderator for our panelist discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Again, my name is Naila Bader, and I will be your moderator today. I've worked in talent acquisition for the past 3 years, and after having a conversation with the men of We Will Rise a few months ago, we decided to create Blaze Ahead as a way to assist our community when they're seeking a job or career. So this panel will answer your questions and give you advice on how to navigate the hiring process and starting a career. Just a reminder that if you have any questions, please use the chat during this segment and we will get to them shortly. We have some amazing panelists that work in the industry or have years of related experience. So let's give a round of applause to our panelists, Brandon Shelby, Damian Donaldson, and Anthony Hill. Woo! We will begin introductions with Damian Donaldson, thereafter Brandon Shelby, and then Anthony Hill.
Hello, my name is Damian Donaldson. Again, I'm the Director of Professional Development for We Will Rise. However, I've had a long 10-year career in career development. Starting from college, when I went to grad school at USC, go Trojans, for my master's. That was my first kind of start off into career services. I had an internship there, and then, that's when I kind of realized that's what I wanted to do, helping students, helping professionals try to transition into the professional world. And there's a lot of things that I picked up along the way that really informed me on what the hiring process is like, the recruiting process is like, and also all the different variations of all the different transitions that we're going through. So did some time there, worked for this organization called Inroads that focused on helping Fortune 500 companies acquire talent from a minority students, and also executives on the alumni side from across the nation. As a national recruiter, I've primarily focused on the Pacific Southwest region, but by the time I left, I was pretty much the whole West Coast, Washington, all the way down to San Diego, Nevada, Arizona, and worked with like 23, 24 different universities, top tier universities, state schools. Hosting various events, then transitioned into career services on an institutional level. Again, helping students, alumni, worked in business schools, private schools, state schools, and then also in that same light worked in a data analyst role for the Career Center, to really try to understand, how this transition that we're going through is looking from a data perspective, and how do we make adjustments to make sure that we're, helping our students and alumni and seasoned professionals know how to, engage in the hiring process, because we have been engaging in a very disruptive time period where technology is upending old HR processes. And if you're not aware of what those disruptive technologies are, and know how it's changing the landscape, and know how to leverage it on your own, then you're severely at a disadvantage, even though you may be qualified. So, taking all that information and bringing it to this forum is a very exciting thing for me, especially, people of color, really trying to understand how do we, transition through, go through any hurdles that we may face along the way with a proper perspective of making sure that we're, focusing on just bringing our best selves, and letting that shine through. So I'm going to stop there. I can talk for days. I'm going to stop there and hand it over to another panelist. Actually, let me just hand it over to one of my closest friends here. Well, both people are here, but I'm going to hand it off to another En-ROADS alum, Brandon Shelby.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brandon Shelby. So happy to be here. I'm sitting as a panelist and an expert in the field of recruiting and acquisition. As Damien said, I am an alumnus of En-ROADS, both on the student side as well as the industry. I graduated from Cal Poly with a degree in HR and a minor in entrepreneurship in 2005, and had a lengthy career working as an HR assistant manager for Macy's Federated, in store, working dual stores at the time, just getting my feet wet and understanding of what's important in the HR space. And fast forwarding to my tenure at En-ROADS, I was actually doing much of what Damien had mentioned, managing the account, but also working through the opportunities of getting new talent in from the different schools. Fast forwarding to where I am now, I'm currently working for Bank of America as an assistant vice president and corporate recruiter in class hiring. So recruiting for different positions on the customer service side as well as sales, and really focusing in on what's important to the bank, but trying to recruit diverse talent within the organization as a whole. And so a lot of what has been discussed on today in terms of how to market yourself and differentiate yourself from the competition, and really looking at ways to make yourself a better candidate, a more proficient candidate when you're talking to actual employers, potential employers, is going to be. So looking forward to adding more context and value to the conversation.
Very good, Mr. Shelby. It's always good to get the introductions up front because we get to see how many other connections we all have. So I'm actually an En-ROADS alum as well. So good to have that connection. My name is Anthony Hale. I am a engineering project manager with the Navy, supporting the technologies that are delivered to the warfighter. I've been doing that for about 19 years, and before that worked with a fairly small company, a pretty large company, actually Procter & Gamble, doing a lot of product work. So the stuff you see in the store, the shampoo, even the Pampers, they're responsible for all those types of companies, those products. So I got a pretty broad understanding of the importance of product placement. You know, what you see is important and where you see it. And also just over my career, I've seen a lot of different situations with employees, with different managers at different levels. And so I hope to be able to answer any questions that come up today during the panel discussion. It looks like we already have at least one really good question. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Naila so she can moderate us.
Thank you for those introductions and for taking the time being here today. My first question to the panel is, how did your earlier career choices lead you to where you are now? And would those choices be applicable today?
So do you have anybody in particular you want to start with, or since I'm talking, I should just go?
Whoever wants to start it off. I guess that's you.
So, so can you repeat the question one more time, just so I know how to hit the runway?
Yes. So how did your earlier career choices lead you to where you are now? And would those choices be applicable today?
So it's interesting. Some of my career choices, I knew that, you know, coming out of college, I wanted to do something with education, and I had to do some, research. That's always important to do, is, try to do research into, you know, the field that you're trying to get into, the industry that you're trying to get into, and to really kind of find the highs and the lows of it, right? And so that's what kind of intrigued me into going into career services and higher ed, right? I knew that that was a very important thing. So by going into career services, I was like, okay, great. Let me kind of see how that plays out, so I can advantage myself the best I possibly can. But I think it was mentors, right? Definitely mentors. You know, I had an idea, probably an over romanticized idea. But when you start, you know, going into a certain space, you start to feel it out, and then you have people that you can talk to that are definitely out on the ground level. That's where it has the most impact, right? So talking to people in the internship that I did was very important. But also, what also shaped my career choices was being a part of professional organizations, right? And I think that's a very undervalued, or people aren't necessarily thinking about looking into professional organizations. If you are thinking about a career transition, right? Go to a professional organization that's associated with it. Go to their events. Find out what they're talking about, right? Find out what are the hottest skills. Find out where these, you know, regional conferences are, or national conferences if it's a well-developed organization, because then you'll find the greatest opportunities there, right? And also you'll find some great people to talk to. And you can find additional mentors. And a mentor doesn't have to be a formal program where you're there for 6 months, right? It could be micro mentoring moments, right? And I have plenty of those micro mentoring moments that really helped inform me as to what I should do, like the first step, the second step, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 type things. So I think that to wrap it up in a nice little bow, it's the internship and mentors and professional organizations.
Brandon or Anthony, did you guys have anything?
I would echo what Damien said, especially the professional organizations, especially early on, like at the nonprofit level. It's really fertile ground for you to practice your leadership skills in an environment where there's basically no penalty. And if you can figure out how to motivate volunteers, it will pay forward when you are in a leadership position trying to motivate people that are getting paid to do what they're doing. So definitely support that, and just kind of being open to different opportunities as they come about. I started off, even I knew I wanted to be in science. My first internship and second internship really were in sales. So I learned a lot about sales. And those skills absolutely contribute to my abilities today. So definitely want to keep yourself open to opportunities, and you never know how they might benefit you in the future.
Nothing new to really piggyback off of, but just encouraging everyone to really take advantage of those opportunities. This post-COVID season, I would say the negative drawback is that you're not able to engage people in person as much with these professional organizations. But the positive aspect of it is that you have no excuse not to get engaged, because most of the stuff they're going to be offering is virtually or online. And so you can be on time because you don't have to show up anywhere. And specifically, you can really have those vital conversations or make those critical connections, because it's done virtually, and that's, I don't think that's going to go away. That is going to be the way of now and in the future moving forward.
And can I just add one more thing too, because I know we're on this professional organization thing, but there's a concept, and it's like a phrase that is very important. I think it wraps itself nicely around this whole theme of professional organizations. We've heard of that concept of, you know, it's not who you know, but who knows you.
What's number who you know?
Right? and sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know, right? So there's both sides to that. You have to go and find people, and people have to know about who you are, right? But if you're going into a field where you don't know anybody other than maybe a professor or maybe some people in your student organization, that's not getting yourself in the networks of these professional into the industry. But when you go into a professional organization, you start to meet these people, and when you volunteer and you start leadership, then people start to know who you are, right? So you're doing both things very, very quickly. And I'm gonna just drop I'm gonna drop a dime on people right now. If you volunteer in membership, because you get to know everybody, right? All the members, where they are, speakers that are coming in, and it's your goal to engage people, and there's a reason for you to engage. Even if you're sometimes shy, you have a role that puts you in a position to where you have to engage people, and you are forced to know people, and people are forced to know you. So that's the best role. Even if you can't be the director, volunteer for that, and you'll be surprised how fast your network explodes in a short period of time. So with that, I'm gonna drop the mic and walk away.
Thank you. Next question up for the panel. What impresses you the most when you're considering hiring someone?
I'll take that. First off, what impresses me the most is the amount of research you've done about the company, the position. Yes, your skill set is important and what you've accomplished, meaning you've taken the time to rehearse what you're going to say, and you got a good idea of what kind of questions are going to be asked, like Mike talked about earlier, utilizing the SAIL or even the STAR technique. Coming prepared to the interview with what you want to say and how you want to say it, and specifically relating that to not only the position you're applying to, but the company that you're applying to. You know, a mentor of mine actually recently in career transition, I mentioned, Brandon, where do you see yourself working for? I said, well, I don't really know. At this point in my career, I've bounced around a bit, and I'm trying to find a home and a place where I can feel valued and I can have a place to grow. He said, well, stop right there. In terms of you going after companies, you want to target places where you align with their values, and those companies also align with yours, personally and professionally. And then you can mold your interview to what is most important out of that opportunity. But coming prepared for sure, and your knowledge base about the company and how it aligns with what you're looking for professionally and personally, that jumps off to me more so than anything that may be on your resume, because I can go through that. I can go through the nuts and bolts of what you provided in your resume and your application to get to this point. But what and particularly in this season where it went from maybe 100 people to every one position, you now have 600 to 1,000 people to every one position. So for me, I'm going to hear the same thing as a recruiter over and over again with respect to why you think you want a job, because you're just trying to get a job. But more importantly, I need to know that because there's such a focus from an employment perspective. I think the stat that Rashid put out there was about 80% of the people that get hired end up not being a good fit. So we're trying to minimize that as staffing and recruiting to ensure that we're retaining the right people, meaning from the outset, we're attracting the right folks that really want to be here, right? You don't want to go into a job and just figure, I'm going to try this out until something else comes up. No, in this season, I don't care what it is, whether it's pick, pass, and ship at Amazon, or if it's a sales position at B of A, the employers, it's an employer's market. They get to pick and choose who they want, right? So you got to differentiate yourself and really show, hey, this is why I want to be here, and this is why it's important that you take my interview seriously. Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to add? Anthony?
Yeah, Hungry, Humble, Smart. That's a preview for next week. But Absolutely. You want to make sure that you are exhibiting the traits of the ideal team player. So you should research that and be ready for next week.
So yeah, I've done my share of hiring and stuff, and so I think it's interesting because once you are seated in the place where you are seeing it and you know the hiring process unfold, what we're seeing as recruiters and hiring managers is an extended list of people that we're comparing, right? And so if you think that you're just going to come and just show up and be like, all right, I'll see what's there, then you're not competing, right? You have got to show up saying hungry, right? You have got to show up polished, professional, ready to show your best self and to, tell the best stories. Like I tell people, at the end of the day, whoever tells the best story wins, right? And that means you have to tell it professional. You have to bring your best possible self. You have to be prepared. But you also have to do your due diligence to find out if this is the company that you want to work for. Like Brandon was saying, when you're lining yourself up with the values of it, I can expand that just a little bit further and say it's about company culture, right? Because I've seen some companies that look great, but then depending on the department that you go in there, it may be a highly competitive environment and you may be a highly collaborative person, right? And if you're going in there and you're thinking it's going to be a certain way because that's what you imagined, right? And then all of a sudden you find out that yes, this isn't the right place for me because of the department culture, then it is not a fit, right? In sales departments, it is about competition, right? And sometimes it's about collaboration. But in in other departments, it's solely about collaboration, right? And it works its way up the chain. So I would definitely say a person who's coming in and who is aware of the type of culture that it is, and also knows how to share their story that shows that yes, they are competent and they are people that you can work with, right, is very important because you have applied, you have done your resume, we have brought you in because we have some inkling that you are competent enough to do the job, but we're bringing you in also to figure out if we even like you, right? Can you even come in to this culture and do well, right? And that's the real kind of like assessment that takes place. And so if you have that in mind and you start to make decisions around how you want to present yourself, then you are coming in a lot more educated and a lot more nimble to one, fit in, but then also to see if they're a good fit for you as well by asking smart questions, right? I usually ask questions like, what brought you here and what keeps you here, right? And people sometimes are they step back and they have to reflect now, right? But the whole strategy behind that is to kind of see, what their thoughts are, and then also to try to align yourself up with that person, because now you have the abstract way of trying to aligning yourself up. But when you talk to somebody who is the person that you're actually maybe working for, you can start to set the stage to align yourself up with the person that you're working with. It's easier for that person to see you as a good fit because you guys are already talking about a common theme, right? And but if you hear something that's not in alignment with what you are, please take that in serious consideration. Don't just say, okay, well, I may not like this person's giving me some red flags, but maybe I'll just see if I can make it work. No, I've seen that happen too many times where you come in with that too idealistic kind of situation, and you're trying to fit what they say a round ball in a square peg, right? If you feel like that you're doing that, then most likely you're setting yourself up for failure, right? And trust me, they're thinking the same way too. If you come across and it's not a good fit, then then they'll just possibly move on. Don't take it personal though, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. So we do have a question from our chat from Rowena, And it's, if the employer wants 6 qualifications and I only have 4 or 5, should I go ahead and apply? And Rashid Hill would actually like to start this one off, so he's going to jump into the panel.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate that. Is my voice coming through? I know we've had some shaky. Okay, great. Yeah, I was thinking about that, and like I said, as a hiring manager or selecting official or somebody on a hiring panel, I think one of the things that we have to consider, we may say, here are 6 categories, 6 areas that we are looking for as far as, you know, ranking and sorting and ranking the resumes. And so when we're looking at those resumes, yes, they may have all of those qualifications. You may have a preponderance of qualifications in 6 areas that you say these are important. But one thing that you always know, that whatever weight you put on those 6, depending on the position, if it's a leadership position, then your leadership category is going to have more weight than, you know, your regulation, or you may be looking at education piece. Let's say you have education as one of the ranking or categories for scoring. It may be good. You may have a master's degree, but if your experience is only 1 year and the person that has a bachelor's has 6 years experience in that same, you know, field, then you're going to figure out that if you have 4 that are at, you know, if it's 1 through 5, if 4 of the person, one of the candidates meets 4 out of the 6, and they score at 5 on 4 out of the 6, and the other ones score 3 out of all 6, well, guess what? I'm looking at the person that has the 5s. And the other 2 will help build those particular attributes or skill sets. If it's not one, that's the critical one. If they're going into a leadership position, then of course the leadership category has to be the highest. But if they're going to be team player and they're not going into a leadership position, then we may want them to have leadership qualities because they'll lead or something like this, but they don't have to have that one at the highest. So you got policies, you got, you know, education, these different things. One of the things that I used to look for, because we were hiring junior staff and we were hiring senior staff, we would look at certifications, because a lot of times the education piece was all over the place. But I had people that literally were, you know, if you know the government scale, GS7, that's been in the system for 19 years as a GS7. And so when we're looking at those positions and they're trying to move to a GS9 position, which is, you know, a little higher, and it's a non-supervisory, then you don't have the leadership. But guess what? We know you've led projects. We know you've led different types of things. So as a hiring manager or somebody that's on the panel, you can have 4 quality or 5 quality scores and not meet all 6 and still have a great opportunity to get past the first phase of ranking and sorting the resume. So that's a great question, and I've been in that position many times. Thank you, Naima.
Did anyone else have any input on that question?
I would agree. I would. There's an article I read a while ago, and there's just certain articles stick with you over time. But this one had to do with, it was a comparison of men and women with respect to that particular question. If you have a set of, let's say, 12 criteria and you don't meet all of them, should you apply for that opportunity? And the article was mentioning how men will generally apply for that opportunity, even though they know they don't meet every single one of the criteria. And women generally did not submit those applications if they didn't meet all of the criteria. And so my answer would be yes. You should absolutely, you know, if you think you are a good fit for that particular opportunity and you don't, you might meet, you know, 10 out of the 12 of the criteria, you know, they will probably be open to continued discussions and have you in the running for making a decision on receiving that position. So I would encourage you to do that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just adding to that, Anthony, Rashid, I think just you don't have to have all the skill sets, but in your interview, you should be able to accentuate or really emphasize your strengths. So if you have 4 out of the 6 or 5 out of the 6 skill sets that they're looking for in a given position, you should be able to really articulate what you are good at and the experiences that you do have, so that you can differentiate yourself from the competition. And I know personally, I've applied to positions that would be, I guess, viewed as out of my league at the time, but I know I had some really good experience in other areas that could add value to the position in the organization I was applying to. And in more cases than not, I actually got those roles because, again, as Damien talked about, being able to sell yourself and tell your story. But you have to know you better than anybody else. So if you don't know that, if you aren't rehearsing that now, if you aren't providing yourself with a script, and even I would add to that, in this space of virtual interviewing, whether it be via WebEx or over the phone, you can use the tools that are available to you. You know, you can have a paper out with a sheet of things you want to highlight and talk about. And versus if you're in an interview in person, you can't have that. You're in a suit and tie, you got your portfolio, and you're talking to the person directly in front of you. You can't use notes and things of that nature. So you use what's at your disposal to really differentiate yourself from the competition.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Next up, how have you tackled and overcome racial biases in your career?
Okay, let me see if I can try to take a stab at this. I mean, it's interesting. How do I try to approach this? Because racial biases, I don't think necessarily present themselves in a very kind of overt way. Typically, right? There are moments where it does come out very, overtly, but I think that just the whole terms of bias in itself, the whole concept of bias itself, it is rampant everywhere, right? It could be age discrimination, it could be sex discrimination, it could be orientation biases. I mean, and if you have a feeling that it may be related to those issues, then it's like you kind of have to figure out how do you navigate around it. And I think this is a great reason why mentors are important, right? Because this is not something that is new, right? And there may be some other more experienced people that can kind of guide you through how to walk across that field of landmines, because it could be something of how you address it. Some people may not even recognize it, right? And they'll say, "Oh, it's probably this and that," or I don't think it's it's related to that. Some things you may have to elevate to your HR, manager or something, So there's a way to kind of handle it. Don't be ignorant to the fact that it doesn't exist, but I don't think that we should be able to, that you should jump the gun automatically and say, oh, this is exactly what it is. You really have to do your due diligence and really kind of understand the situation and try to look at it from multiple perspectives. And it comes to a point where it is, obvious, then there's usually a pathway to, acknowledge that grievance, right? And sometimes the organization will have mechanisms in place to help support you, and sometimes they will not, right? And if you are in a situation where it doesn't look like it's being resolved in a way that you can tolerate, right, or that it's moving forward, then you may have to consider other alternatives, right? And I'm not really going to get into too much of what that is, but you guys can imagine, right? but really just, try to do your best to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, find out the resources that are out there, look for the mentors that kind of help you guide through this, problem, and just make sure that you don't let it affect your performance, right? Because at the end of the day, that can affect your performance. What do they call that? They call that stereotype threat, right? And that comes in many forms too. Or there's a thing called the imposter syndrome, where you feel like maybe I'm not qualified for this. That is an academic field, but it also happens itself in it finds itself in places of work. Okay, so just continue to be the star performer that you are, and find resources to help you deal with that in a polished and professional way that keeps you moving forward and doesn't stagnate your career.
Well, I literally just had a conversation with a mentor. I recently reached out to a gentleman at B of A. So backing up, I was a consultant for Bank of America since 2017, working in recruiting for another organization that was contracted by B of A. I recently got converted to full-time working for B of A as a assistant vice president corporate recruiter. I reached out to a gentleman after, and this is post, unfortunately, George Floyd and all the racial tension that is going on in our country. We recently had a series of calls at Bank of America where they're addressing this exact fact, as well as social issues that are impacting us as African Americans that are actually working for BofA. And as a result of that, I reached out to one of the SVPs within HR just to connect and have further conversation. And this topic came up specifically of, how do you combat that? How do you combat that implicit bias as well as real in-your-face bias when it comes to race relations in corporate America? And he said, first of all, you have to let your work speak for itself. It has to be pristine. You got to work harder and be better than your peers. But second, especially in this season, he talked about really being bold, a little bit more emboldened to speak up for yourself. Obviously doing it in a professional manner, but speaking up for yourself in the sense that you're okay with bragging about your work and your the efforts that you're putting forward in different projects or different areas and spaces that you're working in. I know for myself, Anthony, you mentioned being hungry and humble, and forget the third H. But a lot of times I'll be humble and not toot my own horn, but that's almost to my detriment, right? So be okay with having your brag book and having things that you have listed to show what you brought to the table and what you've already accomplished. And then when they go to measure apples to apples of you as a candidate versus somebody else, and you can get a good idea of whether this person has been elevated and pushed based upon who they knew or based upon whether they actually meet the qualifications in comparison to you. And you can address that in kind with the leadership that's making those decisions. And if you feel it really being a problem, then definitely do take it to your HR and address it accordingly. But I would say in this season, we have a true window and a precedented time where you can speak up and not have the same type, at least within certain companies, I should say, not have the same type of fear of retaliation. Because I'm no longer an angry black man or a black woman, an angry black woman. I'm a person. I'm a black individual who works at this company, and I'm seeing something that's wrong, right? And I can speak out against that. Versus before, the atrocity that happened with George Floyd, it just really was in your face and in living color, where they couldn't deny or say it was just filmed. Like many people saw, unfortunately, he was murdered, live. But that woke a lot of people up. That shook a lot of people up, white, black, or indifferent. So to that point, you have an opportunity to speak up for yourself in ways that I know I didn't feel before this year. In previous other organizations, other things have happened, and you gotta bite your time and keep moving. I mean, bite your tongue, excuse me, and keep it moving. Versus now you can actually say something.
Nothing to add. I think it was hit very well.
Thank you. Next question, if we don't have any in the chat, it's going to be, what career mistake has given you the biggest lesson? Everyone's thinking hard.
Nobody wants to talk about mistakes.
I'm gonna let you go first, Anthony, on that one. So,
Career mistakes. Wow. Let's see. I think one career mistake is getting into a position and not truly understanding the culture that is expected for that position. So one example I can provide is working in an organization that has a high perception on how much time you spend there in the office versus how much work you're actually getting done. And you can be the highest performing employee, but if other people are staying late on certain days or have certain hours, that can be a perception challenge for you. So it's really, in that particular case, it was important for me to recognize the culture and adjust my hours such that the work that I was putting in, that was good quality work, could also be echoed by the metric they were actually measuring, which was, how dedicated are you? How much extra time are you willing to put in? And that kind of speaks to what Mike Love was talking about earlier with respect to interviewing and how it's a combination of what you say and the nonverbal communication that you're delivering. And so that would be a good example of where the nonverbal or the non-action of not being there super late on certain days could be delivering a message that you're not intending. So that would be an example I would provide for this group.
So I can come in on something too. And I spoke to this earlier, I had applied for a position in an organization that I knew was a hostile work environment, right? But I was in a place where I was like, well, I'm done with this last gig, and I wanted something different, and it was the position that I wanted. So it was the step that I wanted to take, but it was a hostile work environment. And so I said to myself, well, I'm a charming guy, I was trying to be idealistic. And I said, okay, well, I can make this work. And then when I got there, it was a hostile work environment. So, I'm going to be honest, from leadership all the way down, and there are certain mechanisms in that organization that weren't either in place or weren't enacted, despite a history of that department going through some serious issues, right? I mean, it was very high turnover, and even people that I knew and even people that I looked back and I was like, this person is a stellar person, right? Award winning, has gone up the ranks in different organizations. Why is it when this is here that this person is running out of the door, right? And why is it that these other people have been let go? And I said, well, I'm just gonna keep my head low and move forward. But if you know about the organization, you know, because you're doing the research, and you see these red flags as you're even coming into it, pay attention to that, right? Pay attention to that. So because, you know, if it's telling you about that earlier on, even though you have the idea of, you know, this is where you want to go, this is the opportunity, maybe it might not be the right time or space to make that leap, right? So pay attention to that, because that definitely kind of, you know, threw a curveball and how I had to navigate in and out of that situation. So that would be the best thing I can say.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap it up and kick back off of that. I left Inroads. I was there for about 3.5 years at Inroads for a for-profit organization called Robert Half Staffing, and I left for money, right, for the promise of money and fortune and everything else. I found out very quickly the expectations, to Anthony's point, of what they were looking for me to do in order to get that fortune and fame was a lot more than I had signed up for. Working 12, 13-hour days. I was engaged at the time, getting ready to be married. I'm like, what's the quality of life here? It's all about sales and trying to push towards doing different things that, you know, I was comfortable with, but then in some instances I wasn't. And it ended up not being a long-term fit for me. So yes, money is important. I'm not saying that is not an important thing for you to look at, but don't automatically go to different organizations or companies just for the sake of the dollar sign, right? Going back to the values and the vision, the mission of the organization and the culture. Make sure it's a good fit. You know, make sure it's a really good fit for you. It's a good fit for them, so you guys can move forward amicably. Because otherwise, it'll be real hostile real quick. You'll be like, I got to get out of here. So.
Thank you. Do you guys have any last parting words or bits of advice you'd like to share before we end the panel?
Just stay positive, stay focused, you know, continue to develop yourself, and, you know, just be aware. Don't take, you know, don't rest on your laurels, right? Stay hungry, right? And continue to be focused, and as long as you stay true to that inner core, then you'll be amazed as to where you can go, and know how to make sure you know how to navigate yourself through, and surround yourself with the right people. There's this one quote, and it's said in Spanish. I think from what I understand, it is. I think it's from Mexican culture. I'm not sure, but I know it's like a Latinx kind of concept. But they say, you know, tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are, right? And I think that suggests about your network, right? Tell me who your network is. You know, tell me who you hang around, and I'll tell you who you are. If you want to continue to strive up, surround yourself with those types of successful people.
I would just encourage everyone to continue to invest in yourself. You know, recognize where you are and recognize where you're trying to move, you know, get ahead to. And these opportunities are really beneficial to gather information from other people who've been in your shoes or been ahead of you. So just keep investing in yourself, and thank you as well for attending today.
Yeah, continue to be persistent, stay encouraged. We'll get through this and get on the other side of it. The basis of persistence is the power of will. So be persistent in networking, be persistent in educating yourself, and trying to drive towards a career that's meant for you. So thank you all for being here again, and thanks for having me.
Thank you again to all the panelists for participating today and giving some great information to our audience.